as soon as we.
Hi, I'm David with EV World News. We're talking about electric vehicles, green energy, and the stock markets. And I'm back today on a Wednesday with our resident engineer, Mike Herzog. How's it going, Mike?
We're here. It's Wednesday. My ears are ringing. I'm smiling because it's every time we start, there's a little 3 to 5 second delay, and you and I sit there and stare at each other. And as soon as we start talking,
It starts.
every
Yeah.
time without fail.
Well, it's gotten even weirder because now it used to be it played music,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure it's playing music for the people watching, but somehow you and I aren't
You don't get the.
hearing
Oh,
it.
I get the music. I get the
Oh,
music
see, I
from
don't
you.
I don't get
Oh,
the
you don't
music
get that?
anymore.
Okay.
And I just see the video going. And sometimes I don't see the video on one, I see it on a different monitor. And it's really a little weird how that gets. But anyways, folks, thanks for chiming in. We're going to start off talking about EV fires. Ooh, we haven't talked about fires.
It's been
This
it's been
is,
a hot minute. Yeah.
yeah, it has. This is actually about e-bikes. This isn't actually about cars. But an organization called the Consumer Product Safety Commission says there's a problem. Um, they confirmed the presence of 180 explosive and deadly e-bikes in the U.S. sold on Amazon. Now,
180, just not no extra zeros on that. Just
no,
180.
they've snuck through customs and they're running around catching on fire. Apparently, let's see. Feng FENGQS is the manufacturer, and the e-bike has recently fallen into the eyes of the CPSC. Is the F7 Pro, previously sold ride from this crew. Its website no longer sells the model, but the Q8 Plus is a very similar looking machine. It's not the bikes, but their battery. Nine reports of fires have been registered, and each time the F7 Pro has been the culprit. In two of those, property damage totaling $12,000 was mentioned. This is clearly a crisis of major proportions here.
I'm gonna go check all my battery warranties and on my power tools and all of those.
You know, I remember a while back there was somebody who was talking about how e-bike fires were a huge threat to men living in New York City. And
Specifically men.
it was very, yeah, well, I guess because there were so many, it tended to be more men that
Men.
owned
Okay.
e-bikes,
Okay.
but it was, you had about half the chance of being struck by lightning in Manhattan. Of,
As your e-bike battery starting on
yeah,
fire.
which I'm not saying, I mean, anything greater than zero is bad, right?
Yeah.
So, there's no question, but some of it was just like, you know, people get hit by buses. There's random people who walk in front of a
And I think
subway.
it's important everybody knows we're not, yeah, we are making light of it a little bit, but it's, we're more commenting on, and we've said this many times on here, how anything related to an EV, e-bike, electronic fire is so blown out of proportion anymore. And was there a problem 10 to 15 years ago? You bet. If you order one of those little, electric scooter things or hoverboards on Temu, is there a chance that's going to start on fire? Yeah, maybe. Keep an eye on that one. But EVs, e-bikes, all of those, like it has become so well regulated and improved in manufacturing processes that really is just not, it's not a big deal comparatively.
On average, a lithium battery can burn as hot as 1,000 degrees Celsius or 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. In some cases, temperatures can reach as high as 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, that's hotter than a nuclear reactor.
It's just a lot of, I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, yes, a battery fire, you have to treat it a little bit different. You got to be concerned, but I don't know. I don't know if I told you this, but my in-laws car started on fire a couple weeks ago and was
no.
a like truly burnout along the side of the highway. It was, but it was not an EV. It was just a good old car. They were driving along, and every warning light imaginable came on, and they pulled over and got out, and it was ball of flame for the next half hour. So
Oh, that's terrible. That's
it
terrible.
happens with
Could you
combustion
imagine
vehicles
driving down
too.
the road and having your car catch on fire? I can't imagine standing on the side of the road watching your car burn.
Well, the irony was it was actually my brother-in-law's car, and my in-laws were driving it, my mother and father-in-laws, and we were sitting with them, and they called and said the car's on fire, and we all thought like, oh, it's smoking. No, it was a 20-foot ball of flames. He saw
I'm
as they were
sorry, I'm
cresting a
laughing.
hill, and he just went, oh, very, yeah.
Oh, here's a picture. I mean, it's not a bad looking bike at
I
all.
kind
I
of
mean,
like that. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's nice looking, but that Thing QS may be you know, too hot to handle. Um, Anyways, but this is one of the things Bill talks about this when he's been on talking about bikes is that you really got to get a bike that has batteries from a reputable manufacturer, a Panasonic or an
Mhm.
LG or Cattle or BYD. Somebody, I mean, I'm sure there's some other reputable bike battery manufacturers. I have no idea who they might be, but it is a legit problem with some of these. It's just like, what was it? There was some Samsung phone they didn't want you to take on airplanes
Yeah, yeah.
for a while because there was a problem with them catching on fire. So I mean, this isn't
It,
exactly
it's
something
like you
new.
said, it's a real thing. I mean, if you go to Timu or Alibaba, or one of those and buy a dirt cheap whatever it is,
Hmm.
there's a legitimate, I mean, there can be issues with it and what it looks like and what they do.
I don't know if you've flown recently, but if you have one of these power bricks, you aren't supposed to be charging something in the overhead bin. You can use it in your lap or
Really?
whatever, but you
Okay.
can't. Now you can store it in the overhead bin. You can't store it in your you can't put it in your checked luggage, but you can store it in the overhead bin. But you cannot be charging something with it in the overhead bin while it's up there. So I mean,
Hmm.
it's interesting because now they're talking about this on the flights that um, you can't be doing that, and I'm just like, it's like, well, what's been happening?
Yeah, what do they
So
know that we don't know all of a sudden? They don't want to do that.
no, I get that thing. All right, let's keep on the topic of batteries. So we're going to talk about vehicle batteries. This article was from Supercar Blondie, and it's electric vehicle batteries can easily outlive an average gas car in the U.S. lifespan. So
Cool.
EV batteries are expected to last at least 20 years. The average gas car is expected to last 14. Now, anybody can find exceptions, outliers. Via gas cars, diesel cars that last longer than that. There's been some exceptional cars over the years. What's funny? I used to think that Mercedes were always some of the best built cars because they had some car from like the 80s that
That
they're
just
still running.
keep on kicking. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned I saw one of my friends has a 57 Mercedes. It's like a 180 SEL or something like that. I didn't
Mhm.
even know they had that small of an engine back that far, but it was a great looking little convertible. It was his dad's car and it got handed down to him. And the car has like 120,000
Oh, wow.
miles,
Yeah.
and you
It's
figure
hardly been
it's
driven over its life. Yeah.
almost, it's like 67 years old or something like that. The
Mhm.
car is, and only got 120,000 miles. Because I was asking him, hey, you don't have the Mercedes logos lining up on the grill. Like, remember they used to do that every 100,000 miles. Mercedes would put another badge on your grill to
Oh,
indicate
really? Oh, I
every
didn't know that.
100,000 every time it had turned over. Yeah, well, you don't see that anymore. They don't last that long anymore.
That's, maybe they still do it. They just don't have the opportunity.
They just
Doesn't
don't
come
have
up
the
as
same
much.
opportunity. Yeah, but that used to be a real thing that Mercedes lasted that long. But this is one of the things, and this is one of the things that I don't see people really talking about because everybody's like criticizing EVs. They think that they're disposable. But the real threat with EVs is that if the EVs are lasting 50% longer than gas cars and staying on the road longer,
Mhm.
what's going to happen is you're not going to have the demand
The
for
turnover.
new cars. So you're going to have this, let's just say that new car demand may drop by a third at some point simply because EVs are so efficient and long lasting. I think what you're going to have more of an issue though is we keep seeing the technology in electric
Mhm.
cars improving. I think, this was the argument that Musk has always had, that he's selling technology, he's not really selling a car, right? And a lot of people who drive Tesla, that's their thing, is like, hey, it's not like driving a car anymore. It's a completely different experience. It's like your PC is driving you around. And anyways, that's kind of how he has always described it. And I think that you're going to keep seeing all these technology changes with EVs, with the full self-driving, with robo-taxi, tuber, all these different things. And it's just going to keep changing how the tech works. And,
It's
people
going to
aren't going
be,
to
yeah.
be
I mean, it's just
changing cars.
things will be outdated at some point as it goes through. And I don't know who to attribute the quote to, but I love it that somebody had said the biggest blunder in the U.S. automotive industry right now is that Apple doesn't have a car, and it's just like
And they
that.
put
To
money
your
into it.
point of like it's technology. They are so technology driven, and the actual automotive part of it, like the moving parts, have become kind of secondary, and it's just all about the control and programming and dynamic response and all of those things that's in software. Self-driving, shoot, lane
Yeah.
assist, all of that, it's all software.
So in the studies of EVs, the average is batteries lose about 1.8% of their capacity annually. Now, it's not truly linear, but over 10 years, one would reasonably lose about 18%
Oh,
of their battery life. Um, but a lot of that occurs right up front. And then when the battery is getting close to needing to be replaced, it may happen more quickly. But one of the things is even then the batteries can be repurposed. I'll tell you something really interesting too, as we talk about companies come along wanting to be in EV battery recycling. The problem has been there haven't been any
there
batteries
haven't
to
been enough to
recycle.
recycle to make it viable. Yeah,
Yeah,
you
and
don't have the volume. Yeah.
it's not the shortage of EV car sales, it's the shortage of batteries actually not being continuing in use. Even if the car is totaled
Mhm.
out, that battery gets put into battery storage. And as opposed, for storing solar energy or wind energy, something like that. I'll tell you something else interesting. As I've been studying more on nuclear use and I've
Mhm.
been looking at the companies that make the fuel. So these fourth generation nuclear reactors we're working on use this form of uranium that's called HALEU, HALEU. It stands for high assay low enrichment uranium. So your main grid scale reactors use uranium that's um, been enriched beyond 20%.
Mhm.
Okay. These these HALEU ones, they only require 10% enrichment. So what happens is, say you have a big grid scale nuclear reactor, when that fuel is spent and they have to replace it, it goes back to an enrichment facility and gets converted into the lower
The
enrichment.
lower enrichment levels.
So a lot of the stuff that's going to go into our fourth generation reactors has actually been recycled.
And fuel,
It's
recycle
actually
that
spent
fuel.
fuel. And then when we
Cool.
use it, it will go back to reprocessing again, and it'll get used by a breeder reactor.
Really?
And so it'll go through multiple stages of being repurposed. So eventually there's still going to be some nuclear waste.
Hmm.
Okay. But there's a lot more use of this than I realized. I didn't realize that now it's not saying that our original reactors will have recycled fuel, but in many cases, it's going to have been essentially
Yeah.
repurposed, reprocessed. It's not really recycled, but You understand what I'm saying?
And it's not like it goes through a grid scale reactor and you got to go bury it under a mountain. Like
Right,
there's more applications for it after that, like good
right,
actual
and
useful life for it.
right. So it's not because I'd looked at it, it's like, oh, we only use this fuel for 6 years, and then you got to bury it for 10,000. That always seems kind of funny, but apparently it can get used for 6 years one place, 6 years another, 6 years another, and I think it's going to keep continuing down the line as there keeps being more and more uses for the radioactivity,
That's
which
awesome.
is
Yeah.
yeah, which is something I didn't know. I'm not saying that it's a super clean, super green process. One of my
Yeah. Yeah.
guys said it is not, you know, as clean as you'd like to think, but we know that even in the EV space, we get criticism about, stripping Earth and how many
And what
tons
that
of
means.
dirt
And
we have to
I would
move, and
exactly, and I would much rather reuse that than go mine it, reprocess it, and then bury it from a one-time use. I mean, anything you can do to avoid some of those life cycles of
right.
carbon impact and cost and all of that, that's a great thing.
No, it's really fascinating to see. But, obviously, we know this is a huge thing with EV batteries. And that it's funny because I've had people say, where I can get batteries to recycle for EVs? And it's like,
They're
it's
just
just
not
not
out
happening.
there.
Yeah.
Now what would be cool is if some future state, like you take like the cattle design, like the cattle
Mhm.
skateboard, and it's actually, if that thing has a 25-year life, you almost do like a Lego change out, or Hot Wheels, and like you get a brand new car on top of it with new technology, but it's the batteries are still good. They'll last. And if that's most of your cost, if you could just interchange that thing and almost effectively get a new car and a new interior, and you're just mounting it on a new battery or an old battery chassis. Like that's, I don't
That
know.
would be kind of funny. It's like, okay, so you currently have a four-door sedan. We're going to switch you to the minivan version of that chassis, and
Yeah,
then next time we're going to switch you to the, roadster version of that chassis,
yeah,
and all these different
yeah. It's just plug and
versions.
play, plug and
Yeah,
play.
just lift the top off and put the new piece on there and keep on going. I mean, shoot, that could be a reality, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that.
That's what's bizarre. Like it's a little far fetched today, but shoot, I don't know. Like with what Slate's doing with all
Mhm.
that interchange, and you can make a custom car, whatever you want, and it just sits on the battery platform, sits on the same chassis.
Well, there's another one that's out that's a small pickup truck, but it is four door, but you can fold down the rear wall and have the bed go into the back seat. And so you could go from a 5-foot bed to an 8-foot bed, but the vehicle is actually no bigger than the largest Mini Cooper.
Did we look at that once on here?
We did, we
Okay. That
did. I
sounds kind
can't
of
remember
familiar.
what
I don't remember what it
I
was,
yeah, I
but
don't remember the brand, but looking at that, it's just a very, very small truck, and it's just once again, could you imagine taking a Mini Cooper chassis, picking it up, and you put something that looks like a truck on top of
on
it?
top of it, yeah.
Yeah, and it just seems kind of crazy, but that is part of the, how like you said, the cattle skateboard,
That's the
how
idea
that
behind
could,
it. It's just
yeah, could
interchangeable.
play out. Anyways, let's move on and let's talk about Tuber. So, obviously, Tuber rolled out. For those of you who don't know, Tesla's calling it the Robo Taxi, and they rolled out vehicles in Austin, Texas. So
Hmm.
actually, they rolled out about 20 of them, and they're Tesla Model Ys running around and picking up people with nobody in the driver's seat. And they have the amazing. I don't know how they how they decided to price it, but it's a flat $4.20, and they said there was something on the app as a joke set that flashed up tip, and then it said just kidding, tip,
But
just kidding.
I
You
appreciate
know,
that. That's funny. That's funny.
yeah, yeah.
I,
But
I
yeah,
think that's
well,
good humor.
when he starts with the marijuana reference with the
Yeah.
420, is always pretty funny. Leave it to Elon
It's
Musk.
I got my issues with Elon Musk, but every once in a while, like that's funny. Come on, like if it's silly. Like don't take it too seriously. I appreciate that when he does.
It's like how the cars spell sexy, S3XY.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just you know, it's different. All right, so my first article about Tuber is how long can Tesla robotaxis driving around breaking the law? So, anyways, so I guess it's time to hate on Musk. Um, so during their trial, it was less than 24 hours before one of the AI-driven cars broke the law. And there was a 22-minute drive where one robotaxi made some egregious errors. Let's see. Um, they're clear and serious traffic violations. No one was hurt, but it was ridiculous enough that another driver was pushed to the point of honking at the Tesla. Let's see. Let me see if it gives a
I want to know what they did because if it's I want to talk to the author of that article. It's, have you ever been honked at or committed a driving violation?
yeah. Oh, I want you to watch a video to see what the errors were. Let me see. Here's a running list of all of Tesla's mishaps so far. It failed to recognize reversing UPS truck while trying to pull into a parking space, driving over a curb, briefly driving on the wrong side of the road, dropping passengers off in the middle of a busy intersection. Hmm. And then others were involved phantom braking, in which the vehicle stopped suddenly for seemingly no reason. Its camera-only perception system has long had problems with phantom braking, appearing to misinterpret shadows, road markings, or other environmental factors. Let's see. Had anything else? Um, most riders had no issue with the actual service. They would like to improve the app experience. It doesn't let you adjust your pickup location um, or really drop a pin in the service area for more precise drop off.
And
So
that's what
somebody,
I've read about it and what we've talked about. It's set locations. I mean, it's much easier to program it to pick up and drop off at bus stops
so
effectively.
a guy named Sawyer Merritt, who's an ex user who posts, like Twitter user who posts pro Tesla content, say didn't experience any problems in 20 rides over 2 days. No interventions, no critical safety issues. All my rides were smooth and comfortable. But not everybody's experience was seamless. A lot of robotaxi customers are documenting their rides and posting them on social media. Texas doesn't require incident reporting or data sharing from Tesla. Let's see. The state did approve a new permitting system that could make it more difficult for the company to navigate. They want to revoke permits if a company's autonomous vehicles are deemed a safety risk. Well, that seems reasonable. So they did 10 to 20 vehicles, 3 days of semi-public availability. He wants thousands of vehicles on the road within months, perhaps a million by the end of the year. He claims that almost every Tesla that's out there could be out there doing
Could
robotaxi,
could be doing
um,
this. It's flip a
could be
switch
doing
kind of
this.
thing, update some firmware and software and it could go.
Yeah, pretty much. Doesn't make it sound. Now, as a result of the robotaxi or the Tuber launch, Elon Musk became $19 billion richer. His stock went up as a result of this. Of course, I'm sure he went out and
Enjoyed.
celebrated, right? Yeah, I'm sure he probably doesn't follow the value. I mean, he's like $150 billion richer than number two.
And then expert, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so, but was kind of interesting that one of the Winklevoss twins who founded Gemini,
Hmm.
um, they said, "Hey Elon, when will the robo taxis be accepting crypto?" So while Tesla stopped accepting Bitcoin because Elon said it was too environmentally unfriendly,
Okay.
they do hold over $1 billion worth of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So they they are still
They're
holding.
still holding. It's just not accepting new.
Yeah, they're not accepting new. It'd be interesting though. You'd think they might take Bitcoin and maybe Doge. You could, with his role in the government, you could just totally see him doing the Doge thing, right? Um, okay, so one of our viewers sent us an article about this company called ChargeScape, and their EV virtual power plant ensures summertime grid reliability. Now, we've talked on here a few times about vehicle to grid, about this coming around. So basically, for those of you who aren't familiar with vehicle to grid, it's where you take your vehicle battery, you keep your vehicle plugged in, and you have to have a system where you either have a charger that is bidirectional or you have the ability from the vehicle to send power back. Now, the problem with that on the type of charger, that even if your vehicle is set up for it, it may only be able to power like a single 110 outlet. Okay, so you really need your system set up to take it through that 220 plug and be able to power the whole house. Okay, so that's kind of a challenge, because you do have vehicles that most of your EV trucks, for instance, have an outlet to be used as a generator for tools on site.
100%. And that's like when hurricanes have hit Texas and places like
Mm-hmm.
that. There's always the article, family powers home and neighbor's freezer through their F-150 Lightning. That's what it is. It's got just your standard 110 outlet, go plug in your spike bar and charge and power whatever you need. But this is different. Vehicle to grid is different because it's meant to be at a higher level. You want to be able to transfer more power and go back. And like what you're saying, it's most cases, chargers aren't really set up for that today. Most vehicles
No,
are
they're
not
not yet.
prepared for that today.
Not yet. And we've discussed this. So you have all of these school buses being electrified. Okay, there's like 6,000 electric school buses running around the United States now, and they have really big batteries. They could be used to help with operating the grid at night. There's different things that those could be used for. We've talked about the idea of when semi trucks become electrified, especially if they were like in battery swap situations, you had all these excess batteries, they could really help stabilize the grid, because you have all of these battery backups up out there. And you need batteries with renewable energy, okay? Because renewable energy is not base load energy, so it's not 24/7, but you have all this energy coming from wind and solar in particular,
Mm-hmm.
and it needs battery storage to help stabilize that. But um, even if you had constant 100% source of power, you still have the issue of that you don't want to be making power if there's no customer for the power. So you still need a way to balance that out. And vehicle to grid seems to help with that. Did you read through this
Yeah,
article on the
yeah, and
virtual
it's
power
it's
plant?
it's the kind of where it's going and why it's interesting is that this is being implemented. There are actually pilots. It's almost beyond the pilot stage in different parts of the country. People are putting it together. So, from the industry perspective, the virtual power plant or aggregating a lot of smaller loads. So, like if similar concept, if you had solar panels on your house,
Mm-hmm.
there's federal regulations, FERC Order 2222, that's coming out that says if you and your neighbor's neighbor, if you all had solar, if you get enough of it together, you can bundle that together and actually bid it into power markets and go forward with that, which is just an amazing, complicated process that people are still trying to figure out and get together. But federal government specifically called out EV batteries under that program and said, we want people to be able to put all of these batteries together and across a footprint, aggregate them and be able to bid into power markets and sell it, because there's a huge amount of value, like you're describing, in the power markets for those going in there. So the fact that people are already starting to do this and implement, because you got to think about, you said charger technology, communication technology, billing software, control software. How does somebody opt out of that if, like, boy, my battery's about to run out, I need those miles for tomorrow, kind of thing? Can I opt out of it daily? So kind of working the bugs out and getting those things into an actual position where, yeah, we can bid in and impact the grid is it's a huge leap forward. For me, that was the takeaway from, is like, holy smokes, people are doing this. There's
Well,
not just in theory anymore.
I've seen theories that you could be energy arbitraging too if you were um, selling your power. Now, we live in a place where the energy cost is the same matter of time of day, but other people live in places where, like in Nevada, I think some power is free at night
Yep.
and it's expensive during the day. So if you charge your car when it's free at night, and then during the day when the grid needs energy, you sell it back to the grid, you could actually be making money. And so there's all these ideas of how somebody with an EV could. We're not talking getting rich or anything, but you might make $1,000 or so every year,
Yeah,
to help.
it's very valuable. It's a very valuable resource for the grid and where it's at. And yeah, the companies that aggregate it, you can effectively go to an EV user. So this I study this. This is one of the things I study in the EV space, where it goes in.
Mhm.
Most people, an average American driver drives 40 miles a day. And even new EV, even an older EV, you've got 300-mile capacity on that battery. So you're just using this tiny, tiny fraction of it on a daily basis. So we want people to come home and plug in at peak, when it's the hottest, when the system demand is at its maximum, the AC, and you can make the case, I could deplete your battery in half and you could still wake up in the morning with a full charge, because you are using so little of it from daily demand and daily driving demand. And that's where the theory has come in of like, yeah, it's bad for the grid if they all charge at 3 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but actually we kind of want them to plug in. And if we can put in the technology and the control and communication, like, this is awesome. Like, this is exactly when we need people to support the grid and come back. So it's really it's a cool concept, and it's been theory for a long time. Pretty easy theory, right? I mean, it's, you got a big battery, it's got capacity, discharge it into the grid when it needs it and get paid for it. Like, cool, but the actual logistics and execution is pretty complicated and challenging.
Yeah, this ChargeScape group worked with Ford and DTE Energy to prove how vehicle to home can bolster grid resilience by leveraging EVs. And they were saying the F-150 Lightning could deliver up to 19.2 kilowatts of power. So I
Wow.
don't know. I don't know. Can a 220 couldn't take that much, right?
Wow, that
What would 220 take? Like maybe 5 or 6 kilowatts?
yeah, like they could get up to about 10, because I know like a
10.
garage charger. I mean, some of those have a 10 or 11 kW capacity.
So the Lightning can deliver about double that. It's saying. Um, let's see, enough to power the average American home for 3 days. I know,
Mhm.
as I've been looking at nuclear math and what a megawatt hour can charge, I've seen where in China they claim that can power 4,000 homes. In the United States, though, that number could be as little as 200, depending on where it is.
No.
But I see more often people using 1,000 homes per megawatt. And I'm like, that's kind of ambitious for an American home, I think.
So the US average is 1.5 kW per hour per home or per residence, or
Okay,
USA. So it's less
600
than
maybe.
that, yeah, than 200. So and that is average. So that's also middle of the night, in the spring when your windows are open and no power usage and everything. But that goes up to 7 to 10 kW during peak demand periods. So like when your AC is cranking on a day like
Yeah.
today, it's late June and it's going to be hot and sticky. That number goes down, or the power consumption goes up by a factor of 5 or 10 or something like that.
Oh, wow. Wow. That
It's
makes it jump a
AC is a
lot.
big deal. AC is a big deal still.
Oh, this Chargescape says that with California, they're aiming to deliver 100 megawatts of flexibility to the California grid through smart charging, reducing demand, bidirectional power. I mean, 100 megawatts isn't, in the greater scheme of things for California, a big deal, but it's still the fact that it's new. I know that Maryland is the first state to actually have some rules at the state level on the topic. So, we're starting to see more and more. of this vehicle to grid really come to life. So, you know,
And this is
int-
a case where, government intervention, Department of Energy, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the steps they're taking are to open up the markets. So it's in order to encourage more batteries, more renewables, or everything, they're making it easier for market participation. So this is
yeah.
one of those cases where federal government taking action. It's, we want people to enter this space. We're going to make the barriers of entry lower for you, and actually require people to accept your bids and what you're putting into the market. So I view it as a good thing in that case, but um, I think it's one of those, even with the current administration, I really hope these regulations stand because it opens up more people to the market.
The one thing where I've really been disappointed in the current administration is this new law, the Big Beautiful Bill,
Mm-hmm.
is got a provision to sell off the
The post office,
9,000 post
did you see
office,
a
was that Oshkosh defense vehicles.
mm-hmm.
And from what I've already heard, the ones that have been deployed, and the postal workers have gotten to use them, it's a better experience for the driver. Once again, you don't have to put a key in it. You don't have to worry about the air. You can leave the air conditioning
You can idle.
going when you're
There's
not
no
in
idling.
there.
Yeah.
There's no idling. You don't have to put in a parking brake. There's all these things you don't have to do, which are things that Amazon already figured out with Rivian.
Yeah.
Because you can look at Rivian, and I've talked to drivers here locally that say, man, it feels like I'm being punished if they make me drive one of the gas ones, because you have to have a key.
Yeah.
You can't leave the air conditioner running. You have to engage the parking brake. You said there's 4 steps you have to do with the gas powered ones that the Rivians
And
don't
if you're
have you
making
do.
500 stops a day, like that adds up. That really
Yeah,
adds up.
that's a lot. And so if you look at both the efficiency of the workers, the lower cost of operating for the postal service, they're not going to have the same level of mechanics around
Mm-hmm.
to fix these things. And it just seems like a dumb, and I realize people on the right think that EVs are woke agenda.
And
Okay, and
being
that's
oh,
not the case.
yeah, yeah.
These Oshkosh defense vehicles win on total cost of ownership.
And that's
And
the stuff I read about it. They didn't bring that up. It's like, God, did anybody do like this is actually more efficient. This is actually a cost savings move over the long term. Like why? And then they thought, well, we'll be able to resell it. And the analysis is like, no, the
well, but there's
chargers
not
you've
another
already
user for that.
installed, or nobody's going to want them. There's no resale value for
No,
these.
there's no resell for used chargers. Yeah, because the cost of the chargers is well, level 3 chargers. There
The
probably could
hardware,
be,
but
but there isn't.
no,
But
the cost is installing and like building it
yeah,
out and putting it in. Yeah.
yeah, and the vehicles themselves are specially designed for the postal service.
Hmm.
With opposite side drive and, all those kind of things. Yeah, this that isn't too well thought of. They talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, and getting rid of that is definitely waste, fraud, and abuse.
It's pretty
There,
wasteful.
there wasn't, there wasn't anything wasteful in buying those. The postal service is a perfect use case. That your
Yeah.
drivers are driving. They're not driving 100 miles a day.
They have a
Uh,
fixed
uh,
route. They park in the
yeah,
same location every night. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there's all these things where they're an absolute perfect use case for EVs, and then just like, oh, this just makes me sad because it's, that is something that um, I you could argue there's a lot of use cases for petrol powered vehicles for certain applications. We
Mhm.
already know that um, electric warfighting vehicles don't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, there's some use cases for e-bikes and some other things that have been shown in the war in Ukraine, but you're not going to have electric tanks. You're not going to have electric, armored personnel carriers, things like that. But when you're talking about driving around on the base,
Yeah.
and all these other applications, it's a cost savings for the military. It's, there's a whole lot of quality of life benefits.
quality
and
of
that's
life,
it.
and you think from a military application, logistics
Mhm.
of set up one solar panel one time, get that base there versus fuel delivery, over and over for on-base applications. Those are the ones that get me of how much does it cost to deliver fuel to some of these remote locations where you just kind of send up a central charging hub and did what you could, you could save a lot on that.
Well, I look at even, the stuff we're dealing with SMR nuclear is that the military wants to have at least 6 bases to have SMRs on them by 2030.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is a lot of these bases are remote, and possibly the electrical supply to those bases could be subject to
Espionage
tampering from the
attacks. Yeah.
outside.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and the SMRs have a very small footprint on the base. They're not something that if they were hit um, by a strike, they'd have some massive nuclear meltdown on the new technology. And now the old technology, like that Zaporizhia place over in Ukraine, that's a big deal. It doesn't need to keep getting hit
No, they
by
should.
shells. That's a whole
The
different
first
ballgame.
time they attacked, that was like the world went, no, I don't think you should be doing that, Russia.
Yeah, yeah,
Really?
it's the largest nuclear power plant, I think, in all of Europe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That was
and
a big deal of like, stay away from that one.
I think, and I'm not sure if that's a Gen 2 or a Gen 3, but either way, they though those are not something you toy with. But whereas the Generation 4 nuclear can't melt down,
So
and
yeah,
so
it extinguishes itself pretty much.
yeah, and so there's a big difference in the technology, and that's what the government wants to do in some of these cases. But anyways, all right. Well, a good show today. That was all I
Mhm.
had for us to cover. Folks, I want to thank everybody for watching. I have a guest from a company called Auto Lease tomorrow talking about what's going on in the, in that space. So we'll see where, what's going with that. That'll be with Bill, and Mike and I will be back next week. Otherwise, folks, thanks for watching, and we'll see y'all tomorrow.